Hello again, welcome back to Asgard, and welcome back to our Pyrotech Tutorial Spotlight series. So today we are going to be talking about mechanical machines as well as the refractory upgraded machines. Now next episode we're going to be covering the refractory burning multi-block. It'll probably be a little bit shorter of an episode, but I think it'll work out best if we split it off. That way and have it as its own separate episode, because there is a bit to cover in both the mechanical stuff as well as the refractory pit burning. Not to mention I'd like to show you guys some setups and things. So talking about the mechanical machines first, and then we'll talk about the refractory, the upgraded machines from the stone versions. So within Pyrotech there's 4 mechanical machines. There's the mechanical Bellows, the mechanical compactor, the mechanical Mulcher, and the mechanical hopper. Now each of these requires a cog in order to work, and there's a few different types of cogs. There's wooden, stone, flint, bone, iron, gold, diamond, and obsidian. Now you'll notice that each one has kind of different durability, which, as you may expect, is how many times it can be used. Gold, of course, has a very trademark low durability at 33, even worse than wood cogs. So I would not suggest probably making your cogs out of gold ever. But in addition, there are stats attributed to these different cogs, and you can see that mechanical hopper is ×1, mechanical compactor is 10%, mechanical mulcher is a ×1 and a 1x1. And if we go up, you can see increasing and varying stats on each of these. Diamond, of course, being the best, with a ×64 mechanical hopper, 50% mechanical compactor, ×64 mechanical hopper, at 50% on the compactor, and a ×8 and 11x11 on the mulcher, with a very solid durability of 16,384. So once you get up to the point that you can make diamond cogs, they're well worth it. They last forever. They last a really, really long time, and you can see that they just require diamond shards, which is a single diamond per cog, with one left over, of course. So they are very, very cheap once you get up to the point where you can get the diamond shards. But the way that they work, I'm going to be using a diamond cog, for example, but we will change up on certain things. Actually, let me grab a wooden one here too. First up, we're going to talk about the mechanical hopper, because, of course, within Pyrotech, with iron being a little bit more expensive, a little bit more time-gated, mechanical hoppers only require tarred planks, stone rod, and masonry bricks. And within default Pyrotech, of course, regular hoppers are default recipes. So once you get up to iron, you can move over to the default hoppers. Though I will say that is kind of pack dependent. Like in Tails, regular hoppers are really, really light. So you'll be relying on the mechanical hoppers a lot more instead of just pushing on to iron and getting into regular hoppers. So the way that the mechanical hopper works is exactly as you may expect. You can turn the output nozzle, you can have it facing straight down or to any cardinal direction. And then what you can do is, of course, have something that's feeding into it. Now you can't open this up and place items in it like a normal hopper, but aside from that, it behaves a lot like a normal hopper. Now if I was to put a chest in here, you'll notice that it does not go anywhere. That's where the cogs come in. So if we put a wooden cog on here and we give it a second, there we go, it's going to turn, and there's our chest. Okay. Now if I was to grab a stack of cobbled andesite and throw it in here, you're going to notice that with a wooden cog it only moves one item at a time. That's what the mechanical hopper ×1 is. Now if I grab this back out, and let's grab just a few more stacks to kind of showcase this, and I'm going to right click and pull this cog off. Now of course once the durability reaches 0, the cog will break and you will need to apply a new cog. But once again, once you get up to a diamond cog, it's not a big deal. And once you get up to a diamond cog, that's where the mechanical hopper can really outperform a standard vanilla hopper, because with the diamond hopper, if we throw this in, you'll see that every time it turns, it's moving an entire stack. So about a stack per second, 2 seconds, something like that. And every time that it turns, it will take 1 durability off of this diamond cog. So you can see, well, you can't see the durability on here, but it's taking 1 durability every time that it turns. And one thing that I do want to mention is that you can enchant these. So you can make a hopper with unbreaking, or a cog with unbreaking 3, thus increasing the kind of the duration that it'll last and the amount of processes that it can do. So that may be worth doing. It is an option. You can also put mending on it, so you can make a mending unbreaking cog that you then pull out and repair with XP, and pretty much have a almost forever kind of cog. And I know within Tails I've made some unbreakable cogs that are craftable, so something to kind of bear in mind and keep an eye out for. Now next up we have the mechanical compactor. We talked about the compacting bin a bit back. This is basically a mechanical version of that. So if you take a look here, it says mechanical compactor 50% compared to mechanical compactor 10%. I want to show you how that works. It's pretty self-explanatory, but if you put, like for example, coal coke into here, you can see that 64 coal coke is going to make 7 blocks of coal coke. And we can go ahead and add some more. There's 14. And we can add a little bit more, and there is 16. And like some of the other things, this is based off of the output and not the input. So for example, let me grab, let's take charcoal flakes for example. Okay, let's grab a bit of these. And you'll notice that if we dump this in here, it's going to fill up a whole lot slower. And that's because, once again, it's based on the output of the items and not the input. So you'll be able to put a whole lot more charcoal flakes. I'm not even going to bother putting them all in there. But you'll basically be able to put 16 blocks of charcoal worth of charcoal flakes into it. Okay, so let's fill this back up. And if we put on a wooden cog and we let this thing turn, you're going to notice that it fills up the bar by 10% per operation. And each operation is taking 1 durability off of this wooden cog. That's where the mechanical compactor percentages come in. Diamond cog, of course, being the best, 50%. And if you place this thing on here, you're going to notice that it's going to do 50% of that operation per turn of the gear, right? Per durability as well. So it'll quickly go through this. Your output's going to come out right here, and then of course you can just right-click that to remove it. And if you're wanting to automate this side is going to be your input. So feeding into this side will allow you to input items, and pulling out from this side is going to allow you to pull out items. If we just break this open for just a moment, we're going to use our mechanical hopper here. Place that on. And there we go. It just pulled out 8 and fed it down into this chest. And that is the mechanical compactor. It pretty much just saves you from having to have a shovel and using the compacting bin, as you will inevitably be doing a bit of compacting, especially when it comes to things like your slag, once you start processing a lot of metals, but also for a few other things here. Because you will notice that Pyrotech adjusts a lot of these recipes related to compacting things, to where, not that one, but this one, for example, you can't just handcraft out a block of lapis. You actually have to compact it. And so it's going to save you a bit of time when it comes to things like that. Also, your rocks, your dirt, a lot of these little byproduct things that you'll inevitably have a lot of, you will be able to run those through the compactor. Even things like snow cannot be compacted by hand with default Pyrotech because it overwrites all those recipes. Now next up, let's talk about the mechanical mulcher. And you're going to notice a variety of cogs here that say, times 8 in an 11 by 11, or times 1 in a 1 by 1. I definitely would not suggest a wooden cog for this, unless you only want to mulch one bit of farmland. But let me set up a farm real quick. Okay, so that's an 11 by 11 farm. Of course, I have the one in the center there, and then I have some around the edge. Chances are you might be doing like a 9 by 9 or something like that, but of course it just depends. But if you set up the mechanical mulcher, whoops, it needs to go this way, set that down, and if we, for example, let's grab a wooden cog so I can show you what that does, and then I'll show you the diamond. And let's grab ourselves some potash mulch, and let's go ahead and set ourselves up a hopper. You can put this in like manually, but we're going to use a hopper for it. And let's put our chest here. There we go. And if we put our diamond cog onto here and we give it a second, it's going to start feeding that potash mulch down into here. And you can see it can store, basically it has an internal inventory of 320 mulch, potash mulch. So it can store a massive amount within it. Also worth noting, I didn't mention before, but the mechanical hopper does not have like an internal inventory. So whenever it moves something, it pulls it from the input and feeds it right down into the output. Just boom, boom. There's no internal inventory. It doesn't spend any actual time within the mechanical hopper. But if we put the wooden cog on, we give it a second. There we go. Took it a second to, I was like, why is it not working? But it is going to place that mulch down. Now, if you use the diamond cog, right here you'll notice that it says a ×8 and 11 by 11. Worth noting, it is an 11 by 11 that's going to cover, and it's going to place 8 mulch down at a time. So if we place that down on there and we give it a second, it takes a little bit, I think because, actually because it's kind of reading the farmland and where it can place it. There we go, just place down 8 mulch. We give it a second more. And of course it's checking to see what areas have been mulched, which ones haven't, stuff like that. So it is actually doing a bit of calculation with this. And you'll notice that every time that it runs, this turns and drops some more potash mulch down in there. So that is how that works. And of course, once again, that mulch is going to speed up applying random bone meal effects, as well as making the farmland untrampleable, which is quite nice. So once you get to the point where you have an excess of this stuff, which is not hard to do, especially you'll be using your sawmill all the time, you'll be burning things all the time. These are basically just free materials that you're going to have a stockpile of very, very quickly within Pyrotech. Now, the last thing that we have to talk about, and it's one that you've already seen in action over here, but that is the mechanical bellows. Now, you're going to notice that none of the cogs have any information on or any adjustments to mechanical bellows. And the reason being, they all work pretty much the same. But this works pretty much like you might expect, in that it's going to automatically compress those bellows. Every time that they come up, it will compress them back down and keep that air flowing. That's how you get really, really large amounts of airflow. But it also works for things like these stone machines. And I'll show you some examples of how fast you can actually get the ovens running. But a couple things that I want to mention. You'll notice the bellows, this isn't doing anything right now, but the bellows keep running. This is the only machine that you're going to have to add some redstone control or something like that to it to prevent just consistent kind of cog decay, because otherwise it's just going to keep running like this all the time. You'll notice, I mean, the mechanical compactor or the mechanical hopper, none of this stuff runs unless it needs to run, right? However, the bellows will continue to run, and all you need to do to stop it is just apply a redstone signal. It's as simple as that. So if we put a redstone signal on this, it's not going to activate the bellows. So you may want to set up some redstone control for this, to maybe have a toggle switch if you're actually burning something. But onto the actual mechanical bellows themselves, you're going to see 3 nozzles on this. Whereas the standard bellow, you're only going to see 1 nozzle. Okay, it's going to be right there. And these nozzles are where air pressure can be sent. So with the mechanical bellows, you can actually send it to 3 machines at once, which is quite nice. So we could have, for example, a little area here with 3 sawmills running, for example, and this would be powering all 3 of those. So for example, let's go ahead and let's throw on a diamond gear, and let's go ahead and put some saw blades on these guys. And of course, once again, we're going to talk a little bit more about this, but once you get up to the refractory machines, you can use better saw blades. Also worth noting is these saw blades can be enchanted with unbreaking. Let me do that. And then let me get some combustibles here. We're going to talk a little bit more about these here in a minute. And just to light this up a little bit faster here, you're going to notice that it's kicking through these a bit faster. So you can see this has already ran out 24 wood, 24 wood, and 24 wood. That is a very fast craft. by comparison. If you want to compare it to just the default sawmill without all my wood chips here, let's go ahead and apply that. And as an example, if we come over here, you'll notice it's a bit slower, right? Like substantially slower, and that's only one bellows. Now if you want to see something really crazy, okay, let's set up a sawmill, just kind of showcasing how fast you can actually get these machines going if you put the time and effort into making kind of insane setups with insane machines and stuff. You know, Pyrotech starts off pretty slow, but it quickly reaches like just insane speeds, like almost those IC2 like speeds where if you put enough time into it, it pays off like in dividends, right? There we go. It's done. That's 8 wood cut down into planks, right? It's insanely fast. Like, no joke, IC2 levels. It's great. And you will notice the burn time, right? One thing to note about these machines, I'll go ahead and mention, once you move up to the refractory machines, it is going to self-extinguish on recipe completion on these. So you don't have to worry about wasting coal burn time. It's going to burn for as long as it needs, and then it's going to shut it off. So at this point, it is beneficial, especially beneficial to start getting into igniters. Either the stone or the refractory, it doesn't really matter. Now worth noting is if you ignite it and it doesn't have something to do, it is going to use a couple like milliseconds off of this. So, you know, actually having some real redstone control and not like a lazy setup that just kind of toggles it on and off is worth doing. But bear in mind that if you want 3 bellows, of course, your fuel input is going to be on the backside there. So you can see that these machines are excessively fast when they're sped up in such a way. And now another thing is, let's show off the kind of the refractory oven. So if we set this up and let's say that we want to cook, let's make some steaks. We're going to make 8 steaks here. Toss that in, and there's how fast they're going to cook. That's done. Boom. Like a second. Maybe a second and a half, something like that. So as you can tell, setting these things up, they're going to blow away vanilla furnaces. I know when you first get started, it's like, man, things take so long with Pyrotech. But by the time you reach this point, which realistically with default Pyrotech is not that long. I will say with like Tails, it's a bit longer, but it's all pretty up front. So you can push on to super fast machines very, very early within the pack. You know, the first half of the Between Lands, you can push on for these. And you can have those like super in-game IC2 speed machines within Pyrotech. Even though whenever you first start out with Pyrotech, it seems like everything takes a really long time. But bellows do make all the difference, and mechanical bellows make a world of difference. They truly do. By far, probably the mechanical machine that you're going to be using the most and creating the most of, bar maybe the hopper, depending. But once again, you are going to have to deal with them constantly running. Maybe having a shutoff or something like that is great. Personally, with a setup like this, I would probably go with more of a manual setup where I manually do these things, and a switch like a pressure plate somewhere where I can put things into this, maybe even feed it you know, from the top with like a hopper, and be able to put my insert items there, and then step onto this and it activates or deactivates the redstone on all of these cogs, allowing them to run. And then something, of course, pulling the items out the bottom, maybe manually feed it with coal to get that third bellow. But of course, if you do remove one of these bellows, you can feed it from the side, but you'd only be able to really have 2 bellows while still having access. So now the last thing I want to talk about is the refractory machines themselves. Now first up are just the straight up stat differences. So you can see input capacity on the kiln. On the stone version is 8, It stays 8 with the refractory, but you will notice that the fuel capacity doubles up to 32, and the fuel modifier goes up by another 100% up to 200%, which means that your fuel within the kiln is going to last a lot longer. And all these machines will work, the same. Input capacity on these is how many items can you input into it at a time. Fuel capacity is how much fuel can it store. And of course, your fuel modifier is how long is that fuel going to last. That's going to be the primary difference with these. The stone crucible is an input capacity of 8 on both, but your output capacity is doubled to 8,000 millibuckets. Your fuel capacity is doubled, and your fuel modifier is doubled. Then you have the stone sawmill, where once again your input capacity stays the same, but your fuel capacity and modifier are doubled. And of course, worth noting, the refractory sawmill is able to use the better saw blades than the stone one. Of course, the stone one only being able to use the kind of the bottom rung of the saw blades as far as quality goes. And then you have the stone oven, which once again input capacity stays the same, or the refractory oven, but your fuel capacity and fuel modifier are doubled. And another big difference here is that all of these are going to self-extinguish on recipe completion. And the crucible, this one breaks with hot fluids, this one can hold hot fluids. So the self-extinguishing on recipe completion basically means that you're not going to be wasting fuel like you will with the stone. Of course, with the stone, you light charcoal and it's going to burn until it's gone. This, you can load it up, go crazy, put as much as you want in there. It's not going to matter. It's going to self-extinguish and keep the burn time. But anyways, with that, I am going to be ending out this episode here. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you found it helpful. Once again, I love these machines. I love the mechanical system. I would love to see, personally, some system for mechanical input, because right now the cogs just turn. I love, gears and axles and things like that. I really wish that's what modded Minecraft was, instead of all the silly cables and all that. I hate that, personally. That's why I hate tech, personally. But I do love Pyrotech, because it's one of those mods. It's one of and any mod that uses things that aren't just over-the-top tech. I personally love them a lot, and Pyrotech is an example of that. And once again, you can get machines that blow away your normal tech machines, rivaling stuff like the IC2, heavily overclocked machines as far as just speed goes. And these ovens do cook 8 things at a time, so 8 things per second, not too bad. And of course, don't forget you have the kiln for cooking your blocks and things like that. So I mean, you can chuck out smooth stone like nobody's business using 3 bellows. So definitely something to consider within Pyrotech. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, as always, be sure and hit that like button and go ahead and subscribe if you're not already, to stay updated with when new videos come out. And next time we will be talking about refractory pit burning, refractory wood burning, and I'll be showing you some really useful, hopefully you'll see them too, as really useful setups for your pit burning and your refractory multi-blocks. So stay tuned for that, and I hope to see you guys next time. Until then, as always, do take care, stay safe, and I'll see you guys then.